Welcome to What Brought You Here Today, an interview-style mental health podcast that focuses on real experiences and how we navigate and move through them. The guests on this show provide personal and professional insight at times and come from all walks of life. Not all of the guests work in the mental health field, and they've all chosen to be brave and vulnerable while sharing parts of their story with you. Please keep your own mental health and well-being in mind while listening. The topics in this episode are sensitive. If you experience any distress while listening, please pause and return at a later time. Please take care while listening. It's about just blabbering.
Yeah.
All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to What Brought You Here Today. I am your host, Ryan. Today I'm joined by Krysteena. She is a fellow clinician, and we're going to kind of just see where the conversation takes us today. So we'll see what comes up. But Krysteena, I will let you introduce yourself and tell listeners a little bit about yourself.
Wonderful. My name is Krysteena Wilson. I am an LCPC. I live in Boise, Idaho. I'm originally from Southern California area, but I've been in Boise for about 10 years. I have a group practice here with a specialization on couples and relationships. So we are very attachment focused here. I supervise our whole team and kind of act as the clinical director, I guess you could say. I guess I've never really given myself an official title. So there we go. We have an official title. I also,
Congratulations.
I know. Where's my award? I also run a secondary online business called Aligned Therapy Shop, where I support therapists in the various stages of their career to help them be successful and create a practice that is anti-burnout.
Okay.
Yeah.
What a concept.
I know.
What a anti-burnout. What a concept.
Yeah, it's still mind-boggling to me that this is so prevalent in our field, and yet we preach it all day in our sessions, but this is just how the system is.
Yeah. Whole other topic. Other conversation.
That could be podcast part 2.
Yes. Okay, Southern California to Idaho.
Mm-hmm. I know.
For work, family.
It's a wild jump.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I had family in Idaho for most of my life. I have a cousin that I am close in age with, and we were really close growing up. And then when they moved to Boise, I would come here during the summer, spend a couple weeks here in the summer, come over winter break, come over spring break, just to try to keep in touch. And so I knew the area fairly well. And as part of my career, I was having a really hard time in LA after grad school. I was literally living in the heart of LA. I was just outside of downtown by Dodger Stadium. Traffic was terrible. Cost of living was very high. The work environment was really, really rough. And after 3 years of doing that, I was just I can't do this anymore. So I knew that something had to change, and I moved to Boise with the intention of kind of being closer to family and just kind of looking for a slower pace of life, thinking I was only going to be here maybe a year and then I would go do something else, maybe travel or I don't know, change careers and move across the country. But I ended up meeting my husband about a month after I moved here. Well, the man who became my husband, and we've been here ever since. So we decided we wanted to build a life here, and it's been going very great. I'm very grateful.
So how long have you been there now, did you say?
It's been about 10 years.
Okay. So you're settled.
A decade. Yeah, I know.
You're
so
settled.
long. Yeah.
That's incredible, though. Is it spring there? Do you guys have, does Idaho have winter?
Yes. We do have winter. It's usually,
just say.
I mean, compared to you, probably not. You probably would be no, this is not winter. Yeah, we get snow. This was a really mild winter, actually a little scarily so. We only had one real snow day, no storms or anything. And usually we have at least a couple of those. We live very close to mountains as well, about 45 minutes from a nice ski hill. And they were never able to open all of their slopes. So that was a big deal, for the people who love skiing out here. And yeah, it's 49 and quite sunny. It's a beautiful day today, actually.
Okay.
So we are kind of getting into spring now, which I love, which is nice. I do like the snow too, though. I mean, growing up in California, it was perpetual summer and it gets kind of boring. So I love the seasons. I love fall and spring and even, when it snows in the winter. It's been nice.
Also, for the listeners, I study mental health, not geography, or weather. No clue what happens weather related outside of anywhere except Minnesota, really.
Yeah.
We've had a terrible winter. We had the most snow of all time. It was awful. Yeah. But it's 55 and sunny right now, so this is how we work here. Very, very big swings.
That's lovely. On that topic, I'm listening to an audiobook right now, and they were talking about the happiest states in America, and Minnesota was
We're
actually
one of
one
them.
of them. Did you know that?
Yeah.
You knew that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Despite the
What's the
weather.
book?
And that was the whole argument, like, despite the weather. Gosh, it's a good question. I think it's like how to spend your money or something, the psychology of spending money, but it's really just about happiness, how to be happy.
Sure.
And it kind of fights the argument how, more money makes people more happy, but then it gives all of these evidences of the contrary. So
Interesting.
I'm not going to say I recommend it yet. I'm only a couple chapters through, but I'll get back to you on that one if it's a good one.
Yeah,
to add to
please let me know.
your book list.
Yes, we are, I think very fortunate here that people embrace the seasons, and because of that, we have also built a state around the seasons. So it's very accessible to getting outside and doing things and having more happiness. And it's quite beautiful here in most of the time, which helps.
Yeah, I feel like where you get seasons, you also get a lot of beauty, right? Like nature beauty, because you get all different phases. And yeah, I never really thought about a move to Minnesota, but just because of events that have happened this year and now reading this book, I'm like, maybe moving to Minnesota is not off the table.
Yeah. I will say it is a great place to raise a family.
Yeah.
And, despite everything that has happened here. So for context, it's March 3rd. We are recording on March 3rd. For context, the world has been aware of what has happened in Minneapolis and transpired in Minnesota. And have, I think, been very fortunate to also see the community come together the way that it has and really rally around each other, which is just beautiful. And so I don't think, I think I would 100% support a move to Minnesota because was it awful and terrorizing for a while? Yes, but also beautiful and supportive at the same time.
Yeah, I think the community engagement was really surprising and eye-opening and really heartwarming in the midst of such a terrible time. So go Minnesota.
Yes. Speaking of family, I think we're going to maybe dive into some of your family planning if you're willing to share and just kind of your journey with fertility. And kind of what, I guess, like, I'm curious how that has, like, impacted you on a professional level as well as a personal level and just, in this political climate too, if that's where it goes, because I know that it's been a hot topic for quite some time.
Yeah, I mean, if we go way back in time to when I was much younger, I never really imagined myself as someone who would have a child or kids. I never really wanted them. I said I never wanted them. I never really imagined I would get married. And, through a lot of my own personal work, through a lot of therapy, aka, I realized that I think just the way I was raised, I was kind of scared to have kids, right? And I was worried about not being a good mother, and that I saw how hard it was on my parents, and I was like, well, that doesn't look very fun to me. But when I met my husband, he, third date was like, I want to have kids. And I was like, whoa, okay. He's a bit older than me. And so he was like, he wanted to put it on the table right up front. He's like, I'm done with the casual dating. Like, I want to get serious. If we're going to do this, this is what I want. So anyway, I always say that he convinced me to have a kid. And I'm so glad that he did, because it's just been the most wonderful thing ever to ever experience. And in my practice, I'm an MFT by training, so I went to a marriage and family therapy program, and I kind of always knew I wanted to work with couples and families in some regard. But I got out of that for the early start of my career because I just worked with kids. I was younger, I was in my 20s, and that's just what you did, right? There was such a huge need to working with kids, and so you just worked with kids, and I was not great at it. And I saw some really traumatic stories from these children, and I usually saw them get worse and not better because it's all in the family system, and they were just in really rough environments. And so then when I started my practice, when I moved to Idaho, really, there's not a ton of couples therapists here. There's more now, but there wasn't a ton. And so it was a really strong niche that could define me, essentially, being in a new area. And so I leaned into that pretty heavily and realized I loved it still, and I was actually able to do it as my primary clientele that I was working with. And I, was working with a lot of folks who were struggling after they had their first child, right? The division of labor and postpartum mood disorders, all of those types of things. And I knew that this phase of life was challenging, but until you really go through it, you don't know.
Yes.
And it was kind of funny. I went on maternity leave, and I had just changed my psychology today and, my marketing to I'm on maternity leave for the next 3.5 months, and this is approximately when I'll be coming back. And I started getting like this influx of just new moms contacting me. And I think that just goes to show how like we, in a sense, we are kind of our ideal client. Like they like the relatability. And I think it was really validating for folks. So I started leaning more into that, like the millennial new parent, right? The millennial couple. And that became like a sub niche that I worked with. And same thing, I saw people go through infertility challenges. I supported them through that. I saw them do IUI and IVF, and I knew it was really hard. But I honestly, because I had such an easy time having my son, who's now, he'll be 5 next week, actually. He'll be 5 next week. I know. It was relatively easy. It was a relatively straightforward pregnancy, and so I just assumed that when we were ready to try for number 2, everything would be the same, right? Like it would take a couple months maybe, and then pregnancy would be fine. And I felt very grateful that I didn't have the same experience of some of these other women who had experienced years and years of infertility, and I just saw how hard it was on their bodies. But again, once you're kind of faced with essentially one of the worst fears, it's like your world just flips upside down, right? And so I got pregnant when my son was about 2.5 and found out that I was pregnant in May. It was a really rough first trimester with just sickness. I was really, really sick. And I had to miss a lot of work. And I just remember that whole summer, I was not my best self. And then around, I had my couple of checkups and everything was going fine. And then around 12.5 weeks, I went to see my doctor, my OB, and I had already had like the NIPT, which tells you the sex and then, if there's any chromosomal abnormalities, and everything came back fine. And so my OB was actually not going to do another ultrasound. She was like, she's like, everything looks good. You're on track. Everything's fine. And I was like, can we just do one? Like, I just kind of want to see, it's been, I think my last one I had was like at 8 weeks or whatever. And, it's like the worst fear. She got quiet and was like, I see something that doesn't look normal to me. And she was like, it's probably fine. But I'm going to send you to maternal fetal medicine just in case, because they have stronger, ultrasound machines, whatever. They can do like a better scan essentially. And so I really wasn't worried. I was like, oh yeah, maybe it's probably fine. Everything else came out fine, right? I literally was like, just thought this was a formality. And I'm like, that's really nice that my doctor is like sending me just to be safe, right? To like help ease my anxieties. And so I went into maternal fetal medicine, a week later, and they were like, yeah, this is not good. Essentially, it was something wrong with the baby's lymphatic system. So there was a lot of excess fluid that was filling, and primarily in the brain. And even at that ultrasound, like it was something that I could visibly see, So then I finally got to see like, okay, this is not good. And now I'm about to get into stuff that might be a little bit controversial, but we talked about this before, and you think it's okay. And it also is a bit sensitive. So just warning your audience. So I was going into maternal fetal medicine, every 4 or 5 days after that, just kind of monitoring and checking. We decided to do essentially the equivalent of an amniocentesis, but since it was before 16 weeks, it has a different name. So they had to put a needle in and try to get some amniotic fluid. We wanted to send it out for genetic testing. We'd already met with a genetic counselor, and she was basically like, her combined with the OB at maternal fetal medicine was like, in cases like this, there is about a 90% chance that this will not end in a viable pregnancy. And if it does, there will likely be severe birth defects and or we might have to do immediate surgery. Like there's usually heart complications or there's brain complications. And because I live in Idaho, the summer before, they had essentially, after the overturn of Roe v. Wade, they'd essentially put into place a heartbeat ban. And so anything after 6 weeks is illegal, abortion-wise. And so, and also we're kind of limited on specialists here, like as far as medical providers and things like that. And so if I did give birth, I would likely have to be life flighted over to Salt Lake City immediately afterward with this brand new newborn to do maybe heart surgery. And then came the other conversations around, okay, so if depending on how this goes, if this does get to become a viable pregnancy, there are still other complications to you, right? Every week that goes on, the risk increases with, you could get this thing called mirror syndrome or sepsis or, just naming off all of these things. It was basically not safe to continue on. And so they left the choice completely up to me. They gave me different options. It was basically like, we do nothing, or we do more testing, or, you can go and we can support you in finding a place to get an abortion in a state where it's legal. So I opted to do more testing first because this is a huge decision and you want to weigh this out, right? And it came back, there was a very rare chromosomal anomaly. I can't even remember the name of it now, but it's incredibly rare, and it's not something that's normally found on an NIPT. Like, you have to do layers and layers of testing to get this. And so we had decided I had an appointment set in Seattle to go to a clinic in Seattle that maternal fetal medicine had actually supported me in getting, which I was really scared about because I thought I was going to be on my own. But they were like, you know what, just because the state does this doesn't mean that we are going to be hands off. Like, we will support you in whatever way. So they helped coordinate a referral. They sent all the information. I had an appointment scheduled for when I was about 17 weeks to go to Seattle, and we had to get childcare for my son. My husband was planning to go with me, but I would have to actually go to the clinic on my own. That was part of their protocol. I could not bring anyone with me. I would have had to take a medication to start dilating my cervix before I even got on the plane. So I'd have to go through that and then, find some way to do a follow-up afterward. And because it was a second trimester, it was obviously more risky, and there's just a different protocol that has to go into effect. Well, I requested an ultrasound literally like the day that I was supposed to leave for the flight. I had the flight scheduled in the evening, and I was like, can I just do one last ultrasound in the morning just to, quadruple check, right? That like there isn't something that we could do to save this. And I always say it's like a weird blessing in disguise, because even though it was the worst experience, like going in and having the doctor say there was no more heartbeat, it meant that I didn't have to go through with this process. And so I consider myself lucky in a weird way. And, I know a lot of women who have had much more devastating experiences. I think just the close contact that I had through this, like, imagine if I didn't ask for that ultrasound at 12 weeks, right? What would have happened? And it's just, there's so many things that I look back on and I really feel grateful about how it went, even if it was an incredibly traumatizing experience. After that, my world was kind of shattered for a long time, and I went through like some postpartum hormones and things like that I wasn't anticipating either. I took some time off work, but all of my clients knew, like, it was my second pregnancy, so I was showing early.
Yeah.
And I had to, have that conversation with my clients, which was very hard. And we continued to try to get pregnant after that. And, over the next year and a half, I had gotten pregnant another 3 times, and I had lost them all. One was 9.5 weeks and the other were pretty early, technically a chemical pregnancy before 6 weeks. They're like 5 weeks-ish. And so I didn't really think I had much left in me, but I was like, the one thing we haven't tried is IVF. And so my husband and I decided to move forward with that. And we, kind of started talking about that in 2024, and then officially went in for the appointment in 2025 January. And you don't realize, I think, unless you go through this, just how long each process of IVF takes. Yeah. You have to wait forever before you get in for the first appointment, and then you have to wait another month before you get scans, and then another month before you get all the genetic testing, and then another month before you get, it's just like hurry up and wait. The whole time is hurry up and wait. So we went through that whole process for the majority of last year, and then ended up finally having the egg transfer last October. And it initially stuck for about a week, and then all the numbers dropped and it ended in a miscarriage. And so that was kind of our last shot. And, it's March now, and I like to say that I'm moving on, but it's still obviously really hard. There was a lot of like pregnancy announcements and stuff over the holidays. But I think, I find comfort in just knowing that we did everything that we could, and we have a wonderful son, and I feel really grateful for him. But yeah, it was, these last 3 years have just been, I don't know, they felt like, they talk about with kids, like the longest, shortest time. Like it feels like it just happened, and also it feels like it was an eternity. So but it really does, like, I mean, I think after the overturn of Roe v. Wade and deciding like, hey, we still want to do this, we still want to get pregnant, despite the risks that it carries, and like hearing about all of the stories and things that had happened of women literally going septic for things that could have been prevented, it felt really stupid. Like every step of this process kind of felt stupid logically, right? But the heart wants what it wants. And then to have a doctor say there's something really wrong, this is not going to turn into a viable pregnancy, and having to face like, oh my gosh, I'm actually going to have to get an abortion to save my life potentially. It was my worst fear. It was my worst fear, like coming to life. And you don't really know what you're capable of until you're faced with something like that.
First, thank you so much for being vulnerable and sharing all of that. I know it's not easy to open up and to put your life out on a public platform. And also October is still very fresh in the big timeline. So thank you.
Yeah. I just want people to know. I mean, I think my biggest argument in this is, I mean, I could share my political beliefs. I could share my views on if this is right or if this is wrong. But I think we're in such a polarized time in our country in so many ways that people don't listen when you put up such rigid walls like that. And so if I have one message that I'm trying to get across, it's that this is not a black and white issue. This is not just you have the baby or you don't have the baby. Like there are so many gray areas that we have completely neglected that are killing women and risking people's, other health implications. And for to say, like, for someone to label a mother as a criminal, right? Or like you're killing a child, like you have no idea what goes on behind the scenes. You have no idea. And I don't think that anyone has a right to decide or say unless they've been through it. Because I think that if you have been through it or you've come close to it, you don't know what your answer is going to be. Like you think you want one thing or you think you believe one thing, but until you're actually faced with that, like you have no idea. Right. And so I just want people to know that there's a huge gray area that we are neglecting in this argument. And I don't care what your ultimate line is, if you're pro-life or pro-choice, you have to acknowledge the gray area. And I think it's inhumane to pretend like this is just a black and white issue.
In your work, are these conversations you also have in your work in terms of like supporting couples and women on this journey, right? Childbearing people, of you need to advocate for yourself more.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. I think, the nature of my practice and how we market ourselves and the things that we talk about with couples tend to attract more progressive folks just in general. But that being said, we're a red state and there's a lot of really strong traditional values, a lot of very conservative minded folks, and a huge spectrum at that of people even in that spectrum. So I think generally, like when this happened, as far as like the state's decision, there was a lot of anger and just sharing in that anger with my clients. And also, they didn't know everything that I was going through behind the scenes. They just knew that I lost a baby. They had no idea of the details, and they still don't know unless maybe they listen to this podcast. I don't know. But I think there's just it was a lot of mutual anger and feeling helpless, feeling stuck. I think I also saw so much denial, and I don't know, maybe you've seen this in some of your work too. Like people think, just like me, like people think it's never going to happen to them, right? It's never going to be me until it is. And even talking to some friends about things like, well, you're trying to have a baby. What happens if something goes wrong and you have to get an abortion and you have to leave the state? And like there's financial implications of that. There's privacy implications of that. There's obviously judgment from people that could potentially happen if they found out what you were doing. They didn't understand. And people are like, oh yeah, I just leave the state. It's fine. I have enough money to leave the state. It's like, well, there's, and so I think a lot of it was, it's more than that. And again, you don't know until you're in it. But I think my work with people became more about asking those questions and really helping them see a bigger picture of what this actually could look like. Like, well, did you think about this? Did you think about this? Did you think about this? Right. And not in terms of fear mongering. Like, I never would want to do that. And I know that statistically, the majority of pregnancies result in healthy, happy babies and healthy moms. But there is still that percentage that don't. And I think in order for people to really protect themselves, you have to be aware of all the potential what ifs that could happen. And it's a scary time we live in right now in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I agree. How, if you're comfortable sharing, these instances obviously take a toll mentally, physically, emotionally, relationally, right? Even in, like the parent-child dynamic. I can't imagine it was easy going through loss after loss and like trying to conceive, right, multiple times while also raising a toddler. How did you find ways to support yourself and just maintain some, semblance of peace or not going like completely off the rails?
Yeah, I think this is the hardest question because, as you mentioned, like this impacted my family as well. And I think one of the reasons ultimately that my husband and I decided to be done with this process is because I didn't want my son that I did have to remember his mom as like being sick and sad all the time. Because I think you can do all that you can to take care of yourself, but it wears you down so much. And, I have an amazing husband and we did go through our own counseling to help support us in this, but his main concern was just like, am I okay? Right? He saw everything that was going on and he wanted to make sure that I was okay. And he let me have days in bed or, he would take our son to the park if I just needed a break or if I felt sick, but I didn't want that to be our future. Like, I want to be an active and present mom. And I just felt like this was starting to take away from that. In that regard, like, I feel like I can take care of myself much better now. And I'm already feeling, health-wise back to myself. And I feel like I can be a better mom now to my son. And yeah, I just think that this was the right decision for us to do this. But I did so many changes going through IVF too, because the doctors don't really give you much guidance. They just tell you not to stress out. But it's like, how do you not stress out when like literally
don't stress out?
Yeah.
Also, like, this is your life and look at the world around us. How do you not stress out?
Exactly. Yeah. It's like this, it's this weird thing where you stress about trying not to stress. So I'm doing all these like nervous system regulation things and I changed my diet and, I cut out coffee. Obviously I'm drinking coffee again, but
bring it back.
It's a little pleasures, no alcohol, like trying to get 9 hours of sleep every night, like acupuncture, massage, like a bajillion supplements. I was doing so many things and it's just like, it's so much pressure to try to like keep that up and then to try to, run 2 businesses and then be a good partner and a good mom. And I mean, it's wild. Like I think about even clients that I've had who've had really long IVF journeys where they're going through it for years and years. And my husband and I always say like, we're so thankful that we have our one. Like we are so thankful because there are so many couples that don't even have that. And so I think going through the whole process would have been 100 times harder if we didn't have him, because in a way, like I had to put a smile on my face for him. I had to come home and pull myself together. I had to keep waking up every morning for him. And that really helped us, I think, a lot, just trying to get through things. And now really this year we're working on getting our lives back and just creating more memories. And like, I'm really excited because we're going to Disneyland in a month for
Fun.
My son's 5th birthday, for his first, big trip. And I've been wanting to take him since he was born, basically. But I feel like at 5, he'll remember a good portion of it. So yeah, there's always like a silver lining to certain things. And I don't know, I think this is a hole that will never be fully filled in my life, but also I just can't imagine like having another year plus of living the way that I had been living the last couple of years. I don't know, maybe that's a roundabout way to answer your question, but there it is for you.
Yeah. And maybe you kind of answered this in there, but how do you I think there's some forced compartmentalization when you already have a kid, right? Like you said, like you have to go home and show up and be a little more happy and playful and do things that maybe don't feel good in the moment, or you don't feel good in the moment, but they kind of force you to like put it away for a second so that you can show up for them. How have you found pockets of joy or hope, like through that time and even coming out of that time? And I think you kind of like alluded to it a little bit in finding the silver linings, but are you having to be like more intentional with it, or were you during that time?
Yeah, I think intention is a huge part of, I mean, really everything. When you start building a family, I talk about it with my clients all the time because time is so limited and resources are so limited. And, you know, we're not talking about quantity anymore. We're talking about quality. And I mean, I just think like the times that we did have, we tried to do fun things. Like we still tried to get outside. We love going camping and we love outdoor things, and we still tried to do all of that. And even if it meant that like we went somewhere, but I couldn't do all the things that I normally could do, or if I took a nap in the day or something, like we still went, right? I made this commitment that like, yes, my life has to be on hold a little bit, but I don't want to halt everything. And I just trying to lean into like the memories that we were making as a family, and, you know, trying to really just create those memories for my son. And I know he's going to be impacted regardless, whether he remembers this or not. But I think just focusing on the time that we have with him, like he's, you know, not going to be this little forever. Yeah. And there's so many things that you're not able to do as they get older. There's more things you can do. But yeah, I think it was just intention and just really trying to make the most of every moment and really being grateful for those moments. I think I've had a lot of training in like gratitude practice over the last couple of years. Sure. And 5 is such a fun age, I feel like. Oh my gosh, I love it. Yeah.
My daughter's 5.5, and it's just equal parts challenging and exciting and fun. I have a very fiery child, so.
Yeah. They get their little personality, but they're like little adults, you know, they have opinions and they want to tell you how to do things all the time, which is hilarious. But, and you know, I think I had to really have a lot of grace with myself too, because there were times where I'd like tried to hide the injections from IVF, right? Because I don't want to like traumatize my kid. Like, why? Yeah. Mom, why are you shooting yourself up with these like different medications twice a day?
Yeah.
But we could only hide so much. And once he found out, he would be like, is it time for your medication? Is it time? And he'd like go stalk us, you know, we'd like close the door and he would like try to creep in, and he like wanted to see. And then there was a phase where he was like, I'm going to be a doctor. He like wanted to grow up and be a doctor. And I was like, oh man, I don't know if this is good or bad. But I'm like, it just is. Like, I'm just going to have to not stress about, you know, am I ruining my child? I think we think about that more than most, just being therapists, but it impacted him. And I hope that maybe he grows up with a little bit more awareness or compassion or things like that too, because of this experience. So
do you foresee like future conversations about this as he gets older? I recognize this is very personal and intrusive, so I don't want you to feel like you have to share that.
Yeah, no, I think that there will. I mean, he's always been so kind and thoughtful to like younger kids. And I think that if he were a big sibling, he would be an amazing one. But he's never really been the kid to be like, I want a brother, or I want a sister. And there might be a time where he does say that, right? Or he might come back and be like, why don't I have a sibling, right? Like all these other kids, all my other friends have siblings. Why don't I have a sibling? And I think at that time we'll just talk to him about it and be like, you know what, we tried and it just wasn't in the cards for us. And sometimes that happens for people, you know. But my husband always says like he doesn't know any different, right? Like this is his normal. And even though I'm someone who never thought that she wanted or was going to have kids, like I always would say, well, if I do decide to do this, I want to, because I grew up as an only child in my household. I felt like it was a really lonely childhood. But, you know, my kid doesn't have a lonely childhood. He's very well loved, and he has a lot of really close family and connections and things like that are supporting him. So it's been a big reframe for myself to like to remind myself that his childhood is going to be vastly different than my childhood, and he's going to be okay, and it's going to be fine.
Yeah. And I think, you know, like we're in this field where we talk a lot about messing up kids and the cycles that we're trying to break as parents, and always like reminding people like we're just going to mess them up differently. Like that doesn't mean it's good or bad, or it just is like it is what it is. And like, and it's okay that like we're learning, they're going to be learning, right? Like and it's not, It's not a bad thing, but I think it's just hard, and it's scary to be a parent, and it's scary to be a parent when you're trying to parent differently or give your kids different experiences than you had growing up, which I think a lot of us like millennial parents are trying to do.
Yeah, I think we're hyper aware of it, and that can be, a blessing and a curse at the same time. But I think, especially as a therapist who's like so into attachment, and that's what I do in my practice every day. That's how I want to parent. I consider myself an attachment parent, but also like there's a saying in attachment parenting that's 30% parenting, where you really only have to show secure attachment 30% of the time to raise a securely attached child. And so on my hardest days, I try to remember that. I'm like 30% parenting, 30% parenting, And I think as long as there's love and safety at the heart of it all, like they're going to be okay. Everyone has, no one's going to come out perfect. And my kid's probably going to have some trauma from just me being a therapist. Like he's going to not want to talk about his emotions because I'm going to ask him way too much about how he feels.
Tell me more about that.
Yeah. So if it's not one thing, it's another. Like we're all just doing our best here.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. That's very true. Right? Yeah. Like also a blessing and curse having a therapist as a parent.
Totally. Yeah.
What does the future hold for you? What comes after this?
Well, I mean, I've always had big goals for my life. And again, I just feel like everything's kind of been on hold for the last several years. Aside from me building this business, I mean, I will be totally honest, building a line therapy shop was a huge distraction during all of this and gave me some sense of control. And I'm like innately aware of that not being the greatest coping skill. But now it's a great business and I love what I do and I love working with therapists. But I would like to continue to see that grow, and I really want to, it's always been a dream of mine to like live in another country for a period of time. It was a year, and now I think with a kid it might just be a summer because I don't know if I want to take him away from school, but I'd love to live somewhere like Thailand or Japan or Portugal or something for a summer. That's definitely, something that I'm kind of pushing up on my bucket list and hopefully can get to sooner rather than later, and just really try to enjoy every day in life as much as we can and build security for our financial future and find other ways to give back and support. I mean, there's local organizations here that are supporting women's rights, and there's a organization called the Pro Voice Project that I've been starting to get more involved with. I have my story shared on their website because they just gather a bunch of essentially abortion stories, and they do series where they talk to both patients and medical providers, and just doing stuff like that feels really meaningful. And it feels like, things that have happened to me have meaning. It's more than just like an event that has happened to me. It's something that now I can use to maybe benefit other people or help spread awareness, or I don't know, maybe hopefully change things at some point in the future. That would be the ultimate goal, but it feels like it's going backward right now.
Yeah. I think it's important like to find the meaning making in difficult situations, right? And how do we move through them and move forward? I don't think anyone ever fully moves on, but how do you want to use that experience for maybe something positive if you can?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's kind of what life is about. Like Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. And I do try to lean into that as well. Like, I think a lot of this whole process has just helped me let go of so much that I can't control. And it is quite freeing, to be able to do that. And it's something I struggled with before, so.
What is one takeaway that you would want someone listening to hear?
I mean, on my hardest days, I would always kind of think about the message that you never know what someone's going through, right? Like just because they don't tell you doesn't mean that they're not going through something incredibly serious that you have no idea, right? Or the person that cuts you off when you're driving, like you have no idea what kind of day that they're having. I think I saw like there's a trend going around right now on Instagram. It's like all these people walking on a busy street, like a New York street, right? And it has like these little bubbles above their head that's like just lost a partner or just lost their mom or just got fired or whatever. And I think about that all the time. And I kind of wish that more people thought about that too, like just to have some more compassion for those around you. You don't know what they're going through, what what internal struggles they're dealing with. And just because someone doesn't smile at you at the supermarket doesn't mean that they're not a kind person. It means they're probably just having a really rough time. And I think we all need to have more grace and compassion for each other during this time. And yeah, I think that's just what I would encourage people to really remember.
Thank you so much for sharing, for being vulnerable, for opening up, for sharing this story and your experience. I know it's not easy in any setting, so I very much appreciate you having a conversation with a stranger that you met on the internet through Instagram.
But I feel like I know you so well.
I know, right? I was thinking, I was like, we also have like the same hair. We're kind of matching today.
Yeah. So many similarities.
We have 5-year-olds. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But I truly, truly appreciate you and to all of the guests who come on and just share these really vulnerable moments, especially in a really politically charged time when talking about these things isn't maybe the most comfortable thing to do, but we have to do it. We have to start speaking up and advocating and finding ways to support change. And I feel like this is one way to do that. So again, I really appreciate it and appreciate you.
Thank you for having me on and for letting me share all of this. And I think if this story can provide a new perspective to even just one person, then it will be worth it.
Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you want to learn more or follow either of us on social media, you can find more information in the show notes. Thanks for your support and listening, and I hope you have a wonderful day.